You offer me a new Star Fox game, and I offer you a barrel roll. It was good, Joe. Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. So, just like everybody else, I have caught the bug. And by the bug, I don't mean a sickness. Well, it is a little bit of a sickness because, it's one of those situations in which I latch onto the hype train. It's just so hype. It's so awesome. And I'm loving every minute of this, right? Before the release of the Super Mario Galaxy movie, they actually themselves posted on all of their social media, so this technically isn't a spoiler, that Fox McCloud is in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Why they decided to do this? Absolutely beyond me. Actually, we do know exactly why they did that. Glenn Powell was a massive Star Fox fan, asked Nintendo to do it, Miyamoto asked the team, they did it, and now Fox McCloud is in the movie. And he is easily one of the best things about the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Here's the thing about me though. I was super hyped, I was super excited, and I loved my time with Fox in this Super Mario Galaxy movie. However though, I have never played a Star Fox game before. And of course, like everybody else, I got a very similar idea. Nintendo might be getting a little wise as to how people are feeling about Star Fox in this movie. People are hyped, people loved him, and they're thinking, hey, you know what? What better way to capitalize on this than, maybe a new potential Star Fox project? Maybe a game, maybe his own movie, we'll see what happens. But long and short of it is, I realized of all of the Nintendo franchises, Star Fox is one of the very few now that I know literally almost close to nothing about. Based on the little bit of gameplay that I would see growing up, I never knew if Star Fox would actually appeal to me, and I just never really looked into it as a franchise at all. I figured eventually I would probably sit down with it, but that time just never came for whatever reason. But now, more than ever, there is absolutely no excuse for me not to get my knowledge up on this series. Because I know for a fact that if they go ahead and decide to pull the trigger and actually start doing stuff with this franchise, I'm gonna be mad as hell that I didn't take the time to catch up on it. Fun fact about me, whenever I want to get into a franchise, I want to learn every nook and cranny about it. When they had Metroid Dread coming in, guess what? I spent all my time catching up on pretty much every Metroid game I could get my hands on before Dread. I think it's safe to say I'm a Metroid fan now, gang. And so, that is precisely what I plan to do with Star Fox. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to go about this just yet, but I have a general idea. Past me, the one that you're looking at right now, is going to speak upon his expectations in regards to Star Fox 64, which is the first game that I'm going to play because that seems to be the general recommended starting point. After I've set my expectations in a certain category, whether it be the gameplay or the story or the music, I'll eventually pass it to Future Soul, who's going to talk about his experience after he's actually spent some time with the game. You'll probably see a little marker or something, maybe here. Nope, here, move it. That's gonna indicate who's talking currently. That being said though, I have started this without any form of a script, so I'm just gonna be yapping, okay? Now, I have almost no real heavy expectations for Star Fox 64 because I have never seen the gameplay for this game. I know absolutely nothing about it. Zilch, nada. But I think that's one of the better ways to go into a game, right? Because when you have no expectations, it's more than likely that that game is going to break every single one of them. And that's always awesome, right? That being said, let's go ahead and start. Let's start with the general gameplay. I know that these are like action shooters. I know that I'm probably gonna end up going like level to level, kind of like a Kid Icarus situation where I'm just kind of blasting ships out the sky. It's gonna be really eventful and there's probably gonna be a lot of neat like little set pieces and things like that. It's gonna take me on a bit of a ride, right? That's generally what I'm expecting. Something like an arcade vibe where it's just kind of survive, don't get hit, get as many points as humanly possible, and maybe depending on how many points you get during the level or whatever, maybe you'll get something new or different, maybe some new weapons for your ship, or maybe some new story or something. I have no idea. I imagine it's going to be some sort of fun. Obviously, Star Fox wouldn't have survived as a franchise if it wasn't some kind of fun, right? They're probably going to be like super short. I imagine this is one of those situations where you could probably get through the game in like a couple of hours, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be action-packed. I don't know what, like, the voice acting situation is gonna be like. I don't know. I know they talk to each other somehow. I don't know if it's just gonna be strictly dialogue on the screen or if they actively talk to each other, right? Because I know that these characters do have voices, right? Fox, Falco, Slippy, and all that. I know that they, Peppy, I know that they have voices. I know that they directly communicate with one another, but I don't know to what extent. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if they actually have voice acting, but I imagine it's going to be a lot of like fun quips and stuff like that, yelling at each other. Maybe I'll have Falco and Peppy beside me shooting from their own ships during these little set pieces, during these levels, and it's going to be really neat. I imagine there's going to be some really cool, crazy boss fight situations going on too. I'm kind of imagining it, right? And I kind of imagine like how we had the gummy ship situation in Kingdom Hearts 1, where it's like kind of a set, like, tone, you know, you have a set path that you have to follow, and that's how you go about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I just hope it's better than that, because I hate the gummy ship section in Kingdom Hearts 1. I despise it so much, but that's just me. Past Soul, what do you have to say about that? Thank you, Past Me. So, as I described, I feel like for the most part I was pretty accurate in my general predictions, right? Starting with the gameplay, as I expected, it has a very arcadey nature in which you are pretty much being taken through a level, something akin to a roller coaster, right? Where you are just going through these different levels, you are looking at all of these different, like, quote-unquote set pieces, if you really want to call them that, where you're firing at different ships that are flying all around the screen. Maybe an enemy is firing at you or something like that, whether it be on land, whether it be a robot or another ship. You are constantly fighting through waves of different enemies, and you are going through different contraptions to obtain little rings to get health back or to increase your health, whether it be for the level or, you know, permanently. I don't think those upgrades were permanent. I can't remember. It's already been a couple of days, but the long and short of it is meant to be something of a fleeting nature situation. You just kind of go in and out. You pop in and out of those levels within like 5 minutes, probably even less. I'm probably giving it way too much time, honestly, because those levels are generally really, really short to my understanding. Now, one of the things that is kind of interesting about the gameplay, I haven't played through a second time just yet. Eventually, I probably will go back and do that, because the general gameplay is pretty fun. You know, I do like the arcadey and just kind of fleeting nature of just going in and shooting down enemies and stuff like that. But what's interesting is the fact that there seem to be different routes that you could take to get to the end. Now, I don't know exactly how much of a difference there is in all of these levels, and I don't know if it leads to like a bunch of different bosses or scenarios or endings and stuff like that. Maybe it does. I'm not entirely sure. I just know of the gameplay and the route that I took and the ending that I got, which is essentially just taking down Andross and billing General Pepper $1 trillion for our services while taking my team to do our own thing, right? But essentially there are probably multiple routes. I do need to go back there and maybe give it a shot. I don't know. But personally, I think that the gameplay is compelling enough to actually go out of my way to do so. And that is speaking volumes on it, because again, it's so fast and it's a lot of fun and you can't really go wrong doing so, right? And another thing that probably contributes into what determines what path you take is if you can keep all of your teammates up and running, right? Because if you lose a teammate during a mission, they just won't be fighting with you for the rest of that mission, and they might not fight with you for like the next one either, right? If Falco goes down, if Peppy goes down, or if Slippy goes down, one of them goes down, they'll be sent back to the cockpit and they will need to have their ships repaired throughout the remainder of at least one mission, and then they'll have like full health on the mission following, right? Obviously, keeping them up and running attributes to your overall score, and I have to imagine that in some way, shape, or form, that attributes to whether or not you go on a certain path or a different route or something along those lines. Maybe there are some decisions that you could make during some of these situations that may change up, but I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being honest. So when I run back again, I'll let y'all know. But another really cool thing about this gameplay is the fact that there are bosses present. You actually do need to take on some like actual big bosses every now and again, and they are really, really cool, right? A lot of them have little gimmicks about how you're supposed to go about taking them down. Usually they have very specific weak spots that you need to shoot at. Some of them have very obvious openings, some of them don't, and you just need to be careful about how you go about fighting them, right? Sometimes you could use your bombs and stuff like that, but there's a good chunk of the time where whenever I would use my bombs, they would miss. I maybe it's just a me thing, maybe I just gotta get used to the controls more, but I didn't really care to use the bombs in most situations. I'm sure that damage is absolutely phenomenal when you can actually land a bomb, but all the time you're fighting some form of moving enemy. They are just moving all the time, constantly. They are never still, so trying to time the bombs was kind of a little out of the way when I could just gun them down. You know, I could push the button fast enough to just gun down whatever enemy was in my path. Especially because another situation that was really scary was the fact that there was friendly fire. I don't know if you could turn friendly fire off, but there were too many times where Peppy and Falco were yelling at me about like shooting them down. Like I didn't actually kill them to my knowledge myself, but there were times where I'd be shooting at them. Maybe it was a for fun thing, but I don't know, maybe I should have paid more attention. Maybe I was actually knocking down their health. But that just goes to show you really need to pay attention to where you're shooting. And I can't imagine that if friendly fire was on and I could just toss a bomb whenever, that I wouldn't do massive chunks of damage to my own team, and I wanted to avoid that as much as humanly possible. So even for boss fights, there was a lot of the time where I was just not using my bombs and things like that. But I don't know, maybe when I run back through it and I get better and, you know, more acquainted to the controls and I fully understand these bosses a little bit better, whether it be like their patterns and things like that, maybe I could time those bombs just a little bit better. One thing I also forgot to mention is the fact that I really started to like those like open areas that they would have you in for some of these levels, right? Where essentially you would be in this one big open zone, right? One big box, and you're just kind of flying around, usually some form of like enemy territory, and you're fighting off all of the like airships that are trying to take you down as well as your teammates, but you're also trying to shoot at a specific objective. Sometimes you gotta like knock out a barrier so that you could shoot the thing in the center, so you gotta shoot at all of these different lasers that are protecting the center, or maybe there's a certain enemy that you need to take down. There was one area where I was fighting off Wolf and his team and stuff like that, and it was really, really interesting. I liked those areas. I would have loved to see like more like that. I only recall like 2 of them where you were fighting like that, and it was really, really fun. So I would have loved to see more like that. Again, maybe there are more areas that I just haven't explored yet because I haven't gone through any different routes, but again, I have yet to see what those other routes are like, so I'm gonna have to go back in on my own time eventually and see what other open areas they may have available in the game. But I'm looking forward to it if they do, because I really, really like those. Overall though, gameplay wise, it's a very fun time. I could definitely see why people enjoyed this game so much when they were younger, you know what I'm saying, back on the 64. It was just a quick little like arcade shooter that you just go home, pick up and play, go through a quick run, go talk to your friends about it. Maybe they had a different experience, so maybe you want to turn it back on when you get back home after school and run through it again and see what kind of different experiences you can get. And that is really, really fun. You know, I feel like it is definitely a product of its time, and it shows. And that's not a bad thing by any means. It's a very solid quality game. It's very, very short. That's the only thing though, gameplay wise. You are going through everything in no time at all. Obviously, the reason that it only took me, I want to say like an hour plus, was because it was my first time through, and I was definitely still getting used to the controls during that like one lava boss that was kind of giving me trouble. But you know, I had to play it a couple of times to realize like, oh my god, I'm not doing my rolls properly. I'm not doing my, you know, like my spins and stuff like that like I should to be avoiding all that lava, and so I had to learn the hard way, and that's okay. You know, I didn't remember the controls like I should have, and I learned, and then I was cooling, you know what I'm saying? The boss was light work for me, right? So I think that gameplay wise, it is very solid. You know, it's very straightforward, straight to the point, just kind of survive and shoot down everything in your path and protect your friends along the way, and you're pretty much in for a good time, almost guaranteed. So overall, I'd say I really like the gameplay. I would love to see how it eventually inevitably gets better and improves over time. Obviously, there's a lot of games that followed this, but you know, I don't know exactly what they added upon, but I would love to see what they did. All right, Past Soul, back to you. After that, the story. This is an earlier Nintendo title, so I'm not expecting too much on the story. I don't know a lot. right? The little bit that I do know is based off of like fan projects. Like there was this really well animated series. I'll put it up on the screen if I remember, but there was this really well animated fan series that's still ongoing, I believe, based on Star Fox. And it's really neat, really well crafted, heavy and deep. Just so many, like, I don't know if it's, you know, just all fan made. I don't know to the extent what this story is trying to tell, because I don't know anything about the canon story of Star Fox. But, you know, I know about, like, I think Fox's father, right? I know he's important in some way. Wolf is a thing. Andross is a thing. I know that these are like primary villains to an extent. Again, I don't know how bad they are. I don't know who shows up in what. I just know that they exist. Obviously, Wolf because of Smash, Andross because of the fan projects and people talking about him over time, right? I think, is he like a trophy in Smash? I don't know. But I don't know. We'll have to play that one by ear. But I think that the story is going to be real simple, real straightforward, something that just gets you into the gameplay, something that's going to, you know, keep you on your toes, something that's going to want, you know, get you to want to progress level by level. And I think it's going to do exactly what it needs to do. So we'll see what happens with that. Past Soul, how we're feeling? Oh, I mean Future Soul. What? My bad. Okay, so for the most part, it does seem that I was pretty much right. Okay, it is a very simplistic story. Obviously, especially in early Nintendo, their mindset was to just get you into the game. Their stories were never that incredibly heavy to the point where it overtook anything of the gameplay, right? It was never like the heaviest driving force, but it still usually did a pretty good job. And in the case of Star Fox, I expected no different. Right, especially, you know, 64 in that name. I'm thinking Mario 64, you know, princess is kidnapped, go fight Bowser. That's the type of energy that I was expecting, and that's precisely what I got, right? Essentially, it's very obvious that Andross is a threat to the universe. Once upon a time, James and his team went to go, you know, handle said situation, but, you know, James couldn't hack it. Obviously, things were left up to his son, Fox McCloud, and his newly founded team, Star Fox, alongside James's old buddy, Peppy, who's, you know, now part of the Star Fox team, right? Essentially, you go from level to level, you fight through all these different baddies and bosses and things like that, whether it be these crazy monsters that are residing on these planets or whatever else that may be working for Andross, right? Obviously, Team Star Wolf is kind of like a parallel to your own. They had Wolf, you know, which is, you know, the parallel to Fox. They had I think it was like a chameleon or something. I don't know. I got to look at the portraits again. I didn't get a crazy good look. I think there was a pig in there. That was crazy. But yeah, no, like there was a lot of cool parallels there. And then obviously Andross himself was the big bad. And, you know, it was really very simple. You know what I'm saying? I do wish that we got more like in depth and stuff like that, obviously on like the team, you know, Falco and Peppy and Slippy and things like that, you know, got to know them a little bit more. I was kind of expecting, this is my fault, right? I was kind of expecting a little bit more in the personality and like the banter department, right? Because the most you can get out of these characters is completely through whatever they tell you on screen, however they're responding to one another on the screen, right? You're not following them outside of their ships. You are in ships the entire time. You're not seeing them on the ground or anything like that, right? And growing up, you know, in Brawl, my first main in Smash ever was Falco, right? Or no, that's not true. I played 64 and my main was, I can't even remember. Was it DK? Either way, Falco was like one of the characters that I, you know, vibed the hardest with in Brawl. And so I was kind of hoping I would finally get to see more heavy personality, especially from Falco, who was kind of like, you know, like the very obvious, like, you know, Sasuke, like the ace pilot type situation, you know what I'm saying? So he, you know, he was, I don't know, he was cool, you know, he was just kind of talking smack about you, you know, but he would always kind of respect you in a way too. When you did something neat, he'd be like, all right, I'll give you that one, Fox, you know, like he kind of gave that energy, but he's definitely like the more cocky one of the group, which is, you know, fair when he's good at his job, you know, that's fair as hell. But he was cool. Slippy was fun, you know, like a little kid. He gave me like Tails vibes, right? Slippy was very much the Tails of the group to me, and that's, I think it made it really, really easy for me to resonate with Slippy. It was really fun, right? Kind of the kid of the group, but, you know, did their own thing. And then You have Peppy, the senior figure, who's been around since James and wanted to make sure that his son is ready to, really take over the mantle and fight on behalf of the galaxy to stop Andros from doing his evil deeds and stuff like that. So, he just kind of had to play the older gentleman, the one that guided you, the mentor in a sense, So, that was pretty simple. Overall, fun little cast of characters that I really do wish I got to know a little bit more about. Hell, even Fox seems like a bit of a character considering the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, he charged General Pepper so much money for his services. So much that, General Pepper wasn't even expecting, what I'm saying, because he kind of works now as like a mercenary. So, that's really cool. That's really funny. I do wish we got to see a little bit more of Fox in this sense, maybe throughout future games we get a better sense of his personality and how he operates. I'm not sure how in line he is with the movie version of himself, but from what I've seen here, very simple, stoic, but, he wants to be paid for his services. So I think that's more than fair. So all in all, really fun cast. Want to get to know them more. Hopefully future games give us a little bit more meat on these characters. So we'll play it by ear. Pass Soul, back to you, gang. And lastly, the music. The music is going to be heat, right? Because here's the thing. We have heard remixes from every sector of Star Fox at this point. Right, we know Star Fox music through and through, where I can hear the medleys in my head, right? I know them thoroughly, through Smash, through other fan projects, through whatever. I know those medleys. That being said, it had to start somewhere. It's going to be very simplistic versions of these themes and things like that, but I'm still very much looking forward to hearing them. The music has always been a banger, and Smash has proved that for the last 2 decades now. So I'm looking forward to it, but we'll see what happens. Future Soul, you bobbing your head a little bit? Tell us. Just as I expected, the music has been solid for ages and for good reason. I feel weirdly nostalgic towards this music too. Maybe it's because of that sound font that they have for Nintendo 64 games. It sounded so familiar to me, from it sounded very similar to the Ocarina of Time soundtrack, or maybe even the Super Mario 64 in a couple of ways. They like to use a lot of horns and a lot of instruments around that general caliber. It sounded just so at home. Right? It sounded so nice. It felt like I was coming home after a long day from school, right? And I really like that. I'm really messing with that sound font. Again, which is crazy because if you know me, I didn't grow up on Zelda like that. I didn't play Ocarina of Time until I was in late high school, you know what I'm saying? So the fact that it feels so nostalgic to me is really, really weird, but it's a good feeling overall. I like the music. It's very solid. Warp is a really, really good song that I mess with. Obviously the title screen is super iconic. Can't get that medley out of my head for the life of me. But overall, very solid soundtrack. Definitely stuff I could listen to on repeat every now and again. Maybe use for background stuff if I can, find some, extended versions of it. You'll probably hear a lot of it in this video, maybe, possibly. We'll see what happens. But overall, yeah, solid. Really brings everything together. All right, Pass Soul, back to you. Well, all right. So I think that'll do it from Pass Soul here, me, I guess. Hopefully I'm enjoying my time with the game. I don't know if I have finished the game. I don't exactly know how long this video is going to be or how I'm going to go about explaining it. Maybe I'll show some gameplay segments of my, live commentary situation. We'll play it by ear, but we'll see what happens. Maybe that'll be an entirely separate video, but we'll play that one by ear, right? So that all being said though, I think I'm gonna go ahead and let Future Soul sign off because he's the one that knows whether or not we're gonna continue playing this game or the franchise or whatever we end up doing. So I'm gonna let Future Soul take it from here. So peace out for now. I think it's generally safe to say that I enjoyed myself with Star Fox 64. It's pretty much exactly what I expected, which is why, it was very easy for me to get into the right headspace with it and have a good time with it, because I knew going in, or at least had a general idea of exactly what I was going to be playing, right? A nice little arcade shooter that was going to be real in and out of all these different levels and, definitely a product of its time. And it showcased all of that during my playthrough, and I am not complaining about that whatsoever. It was a very good time, great music, very fun cast that I want to get to know more. Maybe hopefully down the line I do get to know more of this cast. Obviously the gameplay is very simplistic, but it does have a lot of merit. It has a lot of replayability, and it still manages to be really solid and action-packed with a lot of different unique bosses and, the way they handle levels. It's a lot of fun. right? So yeah, overall I enjoyed my time with Star Fox 64. Just definitely something I could come back to and just pick up and play whenever I just want a little quick action shooter, you know what I'm saying? Maybe if I'm in a Star Wars mood or whatever and I want to play something that isn't Star Wars, hey, there you go, you know what I'm saying? But I can definitely see why Star Fox 64 is so heavily recommended by people to start with. At the time of this recording, I think it's safe to say that this is probably like as far back as you can go comfortably without needing to get into, sailing the seven seas type territory, you know what I'm saying? Because, maybe the original Star Fox games are on NSO, I just missed them. But as far as I'm aware, Star Fox 64 is the just easiest to just jump into, pick up and play, have that, that 3D vibe that everybody, is pretty much used to, you know what I'm saying? It's just a very simple pick up and play that anybody could just jump into at any given moment, right? And it's super replayable, and it just has a lot to offer in small chunks, and that's really, really good. It's a very small but fun way to get invested into, these characters, the world, the series. It's very simplistic in how it does things, and that's a very, very good thing to introduce everything to you, you know what I'm saying? And for the most part, it just sets a general tone for what to expect from this franchise, right? You're a pilot in space shooting down enemies and fighting against Andross or Starwolf or whoever, happens to be threatening the universe, and you work as a mercenary to, handle situations that, pay the right price, apparently. So, it sets a good tone. It's a nice little action-packed shooter, and that's all you really need. Star Fox 64 gets its point across, and it does a very good job of that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, overall, I think it's safe to say that I want to get more into this franchise. I know a lot of people were saying that they have a lot of mixed feelings when it comes to Star Fox Assault, which is like next, usually in like the 3D, era. And I'm not even sure how to go about playing that right now, so eventually I get my hands on it. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, like a lot of the other Star Fox games are a little inaccessible, but maybe I just didn't look hard enough. So I'll take a look around, see what I can find. Hopefully by the time I get my hands on that next Star Fox game, we can make another video like this one, because I had a lot of fun doing something like this. I want to continue doing this past soul, future soul situation. This is an idea that I've had for years. I just didn't know how to go about it exactly, but I think it's because I should have started much, much, much smaller scale. Meaning that from now on, when it comes to newer games and things that I'm, curious about, I'm going to start doing these more, but I'm going to do it in a way that, doesn't necessarily make it so that I have to finish the game per se, but just get a general idea so I have enough to talk about when I do have these like future past soul situations, right? Because I wish I would have done this with 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I started that game. I'm having a very good time with it, and I really do wish that I started a little bit earlier on that, but I think I still can in a way. We'll play it by ear. But either way, my piece has been good and well laid out on the table for now. So I'm passing the mic over in your direction, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Did you feel the same way as I did? You got a little hype seeing Fox in the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and you wanted to see what his story was all about. You wanted to get more invested into that character, more into his world, and get more into this franchise, and you decided to pick it up for yourself and see what Star Fox was all about. And you were very curious about it, and you wanted to, get your knowledge up on the franchise, so to speak. And you maybe had a good time with it. Maybe you're looking into getting into more of these games. Or are you on the opposing side? You still don't really care about Star Fox. This franchise is just not that interesting to you, and you're just going to leave it be as is for now. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does in fact appear to be Skedaddle O'Clock. So I'm going to go ahead and do exactly so. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm Gonzo. Thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor, taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!